I want to show you a Google form in action. Oh lordy, I'm wandering around, it's a habit of mine. So, what I want you to do is join a Google Classroom code that I made this morning. Right there, it is KX5BALV as in Victor. Give y'all a couple minutes to do that, and then you'll take a Google form. I want you to see what your students would potentially do in action before I start telling you about all the goodness involved.
So, where are we?
Go to Google Classroom.
Yeah. We're just going.
Scroll all the way down.
You'll click the join class on Classroom, so if you need to click the waffle.
Oh, I don't think he has it in his
Well, I'm not signed in.
Oh, sign in.
Sign in.
And it'll be in your waffle.
Good start.
Sign in
God
how?
bless the waffle. I'm glad that like terminology is a thing now.
How do I sign in?
There's also a hamburger menu.
True.
The 3 lines is a hamburger menu.
True.
Thank you, Mr. Smith. Appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you. Combined
They
with
are
the
making me hungry.
Right around my-
I would be under Google.
I don't-
No, me, happy.
Now, I will say the Google form that I made, it's a bit on the silly side to start with all the seriousness we've been going through lately. I wanted to make an assessment that was alleviative of that. If that's not a word, I made it up, cool. But I just want to help y'all. I just want to make one that was a bit less stressful for y'all. On this one, some of the questions are references to Star Wars, some of them reference The Office, because why not? But go and join that Google Classroom and answer the questions. I purposefully made this Google form flawed so you could see how to fix the flaws.
Thank you.
So, yeah.
I'm assuming outside. If we're gonna-
Okay, K.
I would like to know how you put in there that it knew my email address. We'll get to
For,
that later probably. Because usually it says put your name and then put your email address. I have
because
it
I was
already.
running it through Google Classroom.
Okay.
So if you're in my Google, since you joined Google Classroom,
I've had them too, and it doesn't automatically.
It automatically
It's
select-
one of the quiz settings.
yeah, one of the settings automatically collect emails. That was my next gift.
Yeah.
Quiz setting, okay.
Yeah, I was gonna show y'all, I'm gonna walk through all the settings using this quiz and also show y'all some more kind of tips and tricks. I will say, because I'm noticing
I didn't see the first question.
math in the room, I'll go ahead and say most of my experience with Google Forms, unfortunately, is focusing more on probably things that are more applicable to ELA, science, and history, predominantly history, of course, as well as computer applications. I did some last minute research whenever I saw the math teachers in here, and there are a lot of add-ons and applications you can download to make Google Forms fit more for math. So if it's like a math-centric thing like writing equations, there are applications. I actually found one. I just haven't had a chance to test it, so I strongly encourage you to do that. They're just free add-ons to your browser.
Can you show me where to add them? Oh, on the browser, okay.
Yeah, you can just look up add-ons, and you can add on just like you would to Google Classroom, add an app that your students would use. You do that, and that would allow them to click and drag and actually draw the equation. Because showing work on math, it kind of dawned on me that would be tricky through a standard Google form. And now that we're going there, I'm going to go
score
into
so well.
I didn't either.
Y'all, I purposely left it flawed.
Thank you.
I didn't get that.
And depending on how you answered
I
the
didn't
Office
get the
Inside
bear
joke.
This is
question.
kind of
Smart. I
fun.
didn't get the bear question.
you
I
read
might
the
be
good
the
Alright.
question. Mine started with this one.
Oh.
I shuffled them on purpose. That's a feature I was going to show y'all.
Oh, are you doing that on a Chromebook or? Okay.
It's on my MacBook.
Apparently it does.
Alright guys, I think most of us have got it, so this is the real quiz for, as our kids like to call it, big brain status. So we're having our big brain moment. Going through a few of these. This is what you saw from your perspective. So you had a bunch of questions, and I tried to do one of the kind of, I call it the holy quadrinity of test questions that we use in formal assessments, which is your true, false, multiple choice, matching, your short answer / fill in the blank. And I guess it is a quintrinity, because I also threw an essay technically near the end. But what you did was you responded. I'm really curious to see if anyone got that one wrong. And I just kind of
I put Luke.
Yeah,
Yeah.
all of them.
It's not Luke?
something
And
I'm
then
gonna
they
learn
give you
today.
multiple choice for
So.
the quota there.
Here's the quiz. So, all right. So what we're looking at is this is from my perspective. You saw it through your perspective, and now we're in my perspective. As a teacher, this is what you get. First things first, you see the analytics, which is pretty cool. So I see I got a 6 out of 10, not going to throw you on under the bus yet. 8 out of 10, 10 out of 10, or 12 out of 16. 10 out of 16, 12 out of 16, or 14 out of 16. And I'll show you why there were some issues where some students probably would have scored higher. I kept this thing flawed on purpose. But what it is, it's essentially built into your, it's built in as a free application that we have as teachers through Chrome, and it is linked to Google Classroom. But first, I just want to grade this and show you all this before I show you how to access and create your own. So just to go through a few of these kind of for funsies. Frequently missed questions. What kind of bear is best? Let's go there. So if we scroll down here, I could actually see the most common answer was Luke. Believe it or not, the correct answer is no, I am your father. If you watched Empire Strikes Back recently. Thank you. Someone reserved like my faith in humanity. Now this one shows the matching, and you can see I had, now once again I like this one because it's technically you could argue this is a telemarketer. Whoever it is, I'm ignoring it.
Watermelon is green and red.
Yeah, I know.
And black.
That's why I said we can go in and fix that, and I'll show that in a minute. How's your day? There's me. Got some more. Then having true false, having a metric crud ton of toilet paper directly corresponds to immunity to COVID-19. Some people drank that Kool-Aid, the rest of us know the truth.
No, it's a matter of opinion. You can debate that.
True, I mean,
I like the
for
dog.
spreading other things. This one's a trick question I came up with, and my students' brains were like blown. There we go.
Yeah, because so it's like halfway there, they're going out.
Exactly.
Well, you have to-
You'll be surprised how many 8th graders miss that. Now, alright, so here's where things get interesting. What I'm going to do now is, like I said, this thing was like, the way I made this was I made this intentionally flawed, and I'm just going to fix a few of these. Which actually I'm getting ahead of myself. Before we do that, I'm just going to show you what this looks like. So let me go to there it is, Google Forms. So if you go to the waffle on the top right, Google Forms is this little purple looking guy here. Now, I mean, this is probably a no-brainer, but I mean, raise your hand if you've used a Google Form in the last year. All right, shoot, this is what we use, like administration, I think Miss Kelly sent some out recently, as far as like beginning of the school year, stuff like that. We've used it before as far as, just getting polls and getting shirt sizes for our teacher in service, but it's actually really helpful for formal assessments. I've been running my assessments in computer applications actually almost exclusively through Google Forms this whole school year. So last semester's computer app kids, this semester I've kept my classroom paperless from there, and if this COVID-19 thing wouldn't have hit, I was planning on actually starting to implement this into my history classroom in there because it allows for some very convenient things that helps us out as educators. So as we see, there's a bunch of options here. If you want to, you click on the little waffle menu. Google Forms is this little purple looking guy right here. If you want to open a tab and go to it, I'm just showing you a few of the options real quick on that so you can kind of get a feel for what we're looking at. On the homepage, you see you have all your recent forms. I have all these organized in my Google Drive, but now it's just showing all of them. You can tell there's unit quizzes, practice quizzes. Actually, somewhere around here, there it is my final exam for computer app. I ran the entire final from there. It was a almost 100 question monstrosity, but it exists. It's pretty cool. But we have that, and we also see some of my history stuff up here. But what you'll do is if you click up here where it says blank quiz, right there, it'll take you to just a plain quiz. Now, of course, you'll put your title, whether it be a section, any instructions, and from here, it starts out pretty self-explanatory. For most of us, multiple choice is kind of the backbone of our traditional assessments. I will say, after a lot of consideration, I'm not sure how effective multiple choice will be with the advent of these kids working on the internet. So I say take multiple choice and true false with a grain of salt, my history, ELA, and science teachers. But you could sit here and you could just type a question. What I like is there is some predictive text. So let's say you want to start with a true false. You actually make that in multiple choice. So you could sit here and you could say, is someone insert a color that's not blue?
Red.
Red. And then here's where things get fun. This helps out for some speed. If I type in true, it'll make false. And you just keep going. You can add questions. And I want to go through some question options real quick. I'm not going to take up too much of your time. I want to spend more time kind of troubleshooting and taking questions. But you got multiple choice, you got check boxes, which would be kind of a larger format multiple choice, drop down menus. And then we get to this, a multiple choice grid is what I use for matching.
Matching, yeah.
And what it
it's
is
awesome.
this would be your rows and columns. So this would be your numbers and your letters if you're used to Exam View. Who here uses Exam View for their assessments, or or are familiar with Exam View?
Yeah.
I live and die by Exam View because that's just what I was trained on in college. That was the software that I tried to emulate because most of my teachers at Faith Academy when I was in high school used it. So even if I didn't have Exam View, I made my tests look like Exam View. So this helps for that. You can make your matching section as large or as small as necessary. And we saw how that worked out, and I'll show you how it looks in the grading side in a minute. Some other options, and this actually ties into what me and Coach Bell were working on this morning, is there's short answer where you type it and you can have them answered. This one I think would be probably the most helpful format for my math teachers, because that would allow them to punch in an answer. And once again, using some add-ons, you might be able to make it where you could have them show their work and then type the answer. So if you're trying to find, X and then, standard algebraic equation, they could punch it in that way. Or you could multiple choice it if you want to, either inspire some confidence or scare them lifeless. Because every time I had a multiple choice math test, they were have the answers 2, 4, -2, and 6. And I had 27,346, and I'm just and then I look up and I'm oh no, and I'm walking out of the classroom and I turn to one of my buddies and I'm guys, I had that, and they're you had that? I had George Washington. And I'm we in trouble. But short answer is that. Also, paragraph is more or less going to be really what I'm going to start using educationally, because this is where we'll start doing essays. I have a feeling that since kids can, and I'll kind of have to address this near the end, kids are going to be prone to probably Google things during these. We can't sit here and be naive and think that the kids are going to be 100%, Scout's honor on this. So I'm starting to take a more abstract approach with my assessment. So I'm doing more essay and less multiple choice, but multiple choice is still an option. And even if we don't have an extended, culture where we're doing distance learning, this might be something cool to do, as well as the fact that it saves paper. And who's running out of paper near the end of the year? Raise your hand. Cool, it's just me. Yay. So those are some options. Also, a few other things to point out. This is how you add your questions. And this is probably the most tedious part, is whenever you create your question, you get an answer key here, and you select the one. And sometimes I will forget to do that. I'll be perfectly honest, I did that with the initial one. And then when I noticed that I forgot to select a proper answer, I decided not to fix it before we took the quiz, so I could show you how to fix it in the future. So you'll do that, and also when we go up into general settings, we can start working on, point values and stuff, or you could just manually insert it, but you could make it where it kind of makes the default point value, whether you want that to be 1 point or 2 points. So let's say you give a 50 question test and you wanted 100 points. You can make the point value 2, and it'll automatically punch that in for you, so you don't have to sit here and do this every time. A few other things to note. I think we covered a lot of the test ones that I use that are, in my opinion, very relevant, because you can use short answer for fill in the blank. I'm actually doing that for a quiz that my students are taking, and I'll show you from their perspective in a minute on that. Paragraph you can use for, more than a statement, more than a sentence response. So for that, essays. Then you have multiple choice, which can be played also for true, false, and your multiple choice grid, which will play off as your matching. So for that, we have our true, false that I mentioned earlier. You have your multiple choice, you have your fill in the blank, your short answer, and your essay. And as far as formal assessment stuff and standard testing, we have all that at our fingertips. And the best part, it's free. Free. Do I have any questions so far?
What about the checkbox?
Yeah, what's
Checkbox.
that checkbox grid look like?
Let's see.
I don't know if
No,
I
not
ever-
that one. The other
Played
one.
with that.
Not checkboxes, checkbox grid.
Checkbox grid.
Yeah.
I want to say it just makes it it's similar to the multiple choice grid, it just lays it out slightly different. It's kind of the main difference between multiple choice and checkbox,
Yeah,
which I haven't played around on.
you-
It's designed just where you can select multiple things
Yeah.
per row.
Yeah.
multiple
Ah.
answers.
Instead of
So
just
that way,
one
if
answer
it
per
was
row,
a thing
you can
like-
select any that match per
Yeah.
row.
Oh, cool.
So that would allow it if you had more than one correct answer per, more than one correct answer kind of lines up with one. So let's say you're matching more stuff on the right lines up with stuff on the left, if things are shared between the two, that would give you some options on that. You could also insert things like images and even do that for the question. So if you click on that, you could insert an image from either your files or Google Drive or whatever you have for your media. So you can actually add a question. So like say for history, and forgive me if I use too many history examples, if you're wanting to upload, say, a map, you could have that and be like, which of the following countries is not part of the Central Powers? So you just have a blank map that's colored, say, Central Powers, Allied Powers for World War I. You could have that, or if you're going to do a formula, if you want to have like a question where it shows a formula that's played out incorrectly, and you ask what the student did wrong or something, or what is wrong with this formula, or what is wrong with this approach to solving the formula, you could utilize that, as well as YouTube. I haven't done much on the video side. That gets a bit on the strenuous side whenever I'm trying to work with students in the computer lab where they don't have speakers, or in high school 10 with history where I'm trying to have them not use the speakers because disruptive loud noises. But that's more or less what it is as far as like the general making. A few other things, if we go up to the top, there's a customized theme, which means we can make it pretty, including everything from like just standard stock images to like patterns. I could let you look through these and you can find one that lines up. Most of them have an aesthetic that could work for most classes. So you can dig around. You got the little heart-shaped book thing. If any, ELA teachers are leaning towards that, there's, I believe my standard one that they have is just like a standard kind of keyboard MacBook looking setup that I use for my computers. Or you could just keep stock purple. But the main thing I want to look at real quick before I start showing you how we grade and how we can implement this into Google Classroom is if we go to the settings, there's a few things we can do. We can go and collect email addresses. So that's how we can keep up with who did what as far as that's concerned. So like whenever I check y'all's progress on the original quiz, I could see, that J.Bell said that he thought that polar bear was the best bear, when, to quote the almighty Jim Halpert impersonating Dwight Schrute, false. Black bear. Now,
Called me
beyond that, if you did polar bear, that's just the luckiest guess of all time. So I'll go by that. But we have that requires sign in, so this would be making sure that's on Faith Academy mail. That one I usually leave alone. And then these I tend to keep blank, which is going to be edit after submit, because it would be a darn tootin' shame if a kid, breezed through his quiz, and then he texts his buddy and realized, oh my word, I had, I mixed up World War I with World War II, or something crazy, or they mixed up communism and fascism, or I don't know, insert example for your class, and they go back in and edit. So these I typically leave alone. That's stock standard. So honestly, the only thing I would do is add this little guy to make sure, and then on the presentation
limit
side,
to one response.
You wouldn't want to limit to one response.
oh, I missed that.
Yeah.
Oof.
That's
Great, I had
that's
to edit
important.
after submit to fix that. That's on me.
Progress first, nice.
Now, beyond that, we have presentation. You show progress bar, which shows how many questions they've answered, how many are left as far as like just progress up top. And one that I tend to utilize a good bit, especially if it's a smaller assessment, is to shuffle question order. This helps when I'm in the classroom. Now that we're working outside of the classroom, I still think it'd be a good use to have it. That way some kid's not texting, go, does anyone know the answer to number 7 on the quiz? So you can't have the patterns going out like we used to. So that's something I keep up with. And another option, which I'll cover in a minute because I totally breezed over it, is you can have section headings, as I did on y'all's quiz, that I have on the quiz I'm about to show y'all. And it shuffles question order within the section. So it's not like you're going to have a multiple choice in the middle of your, short answer, or you might not, your essay won't be your second question. Your essay could still stay at the end, and it's not like you're gonna have a mix of multiple choice, true, false, and matching, because that just sounds like a headache to people taking. Then you go all the way over to quiz. You do make this a quiz, which allows you to set up auto grading as well as assign point values. And when we're in school, this is arguably my favorite thing, because this is how I set this up to be my final exam. Is I set it for locked mode on Chromebooks, which would allow me to rent the laptop card. And outside of distance learning, this is my favorite part of using Google Forms, is I could set it locked on a Chromebook, roll the Chromebooks in, and I just saved a couple hundred sheets of paper I would normally have to print for tests and answer sheets, because they would take the whole thing digitally. It self-grades, and the only thing you have to do, that I always do, I just go over it just to double check, and I'll show you the ones to go over. And in about maybe 20 minutes, you would have graded like 150 kids. 20, 30 minutes, and all you had to do was look over some short answer and fill in the blank, and that's it. Now, if you have, lengthy essays, it'll take longer. For my essays, I'll probably spend an hour and a half, 2 hours, for a couple periods. But that's just because of my class and the essays, they have that. So they got that. And then we get out of this one. This one is one I highly recommend you change, and that is to make the grades release after manual review. Because if you have it where, say, it's case sensitive, and is that the bell?
Yes, it is.
That'll do good.
I'll be getting mad with you, brother. Thank you.
All right, let me
You teaching
finish
this
one.
again tomorrow?
I'll let the camera roll. Keep going.
Tomorrow, are you teaching it again?
Yeah.
Keep going,
Why
Mr.
don't you go
Frank.
Yeah, I
first
didn't
tomorrow,
realize
and
that.
Coach Smith go second.
Camera's rolling.
Yeah,
Go.
I didn't realize that Coach
I got full
Coach Smith
Keep
said
going.
10 minutes and he went
Turn
for
on
40,
logged mode
30.
is only for our Chromebooks here at school,
Yeah.
correct?
Yes.
Yeah.
So it wouldn't work for Chromebooks at home.
Yes, that's
Yeah.
a good question. Only a managed Chromebook.
Yeah.
If they own a Chromebook on their own,
Yeah, it wouldn't work for that.
Only on one of our
Yeah.
Chromebooks.
So I would say keep that unchecked for distance learning. So if you have that,
I'm
and the last little bit, if you click right up here on the settings the more settings right here, you can go to preferences, and this is where you can set your default point value. So it sets it automatically to 1 point, 2 points, whatever you need for your quiz. And to show you what this looks like in action before we go to 7th, here's actually one that I did with my students that I assigned for next week. This is what my kids are doing for their last assignment for me next week. And what it is a quiz on the Russian Revolution. A B flat's the first note of the Soviet national anthem, meme reference. And what it is we start with true false, and it shuffles my 5 true false questions that I have. Then we go in here, and there's multiple choice. There's, I believe, just 3. A matching, which is lining up vocab with definitions. And when they click on it, it will show, like when the kids are running through, they'll be able to read the options. And then they have a short essay for me on why Lenin was supposed to do that. Cool treat, I had kids who overachieved. They took the quiz. So now I'm going to show you how it would grade, because here's the summary. And I still have to go in and grade the essay. But I could show you the rest of this, because here is their quiz questions, and I can see what they got right, what they got wrong. I can go into detail and see who got what, and I can leave feedback. And then we move forward. There's the matching, which it looks like most of them got correct. And then the essay, I could scroll through and see everyone's response. I could read, like another thing is it doesn't show directly who said what. So there's no
Oh, no peer pressure
there's
on
no peer
yourself
pressure,
to be
there's
like,
no
"That
bias
kid's so
where you're sitting there
sweet."
going,
Yeah.
Yeah, it's
like,
blind.
I'm not
That's
saying
nice.
it's happened, but I feel like subconsciously teachers
Sure,
have this one, they're
we're
like,
human.
oh, not this kid.
We're human.
You can read it genuinely,
Huh.
and then assign a grade, give a comment, and you wouldn't see who did what. Now you can look up and see who made what response or who left it blank, so you can comment on that.
go to the
But I
right.
can go in and see. I'm pretty sure that kid just got pasted from the textbook, but I'll read that on my own time.
Also, on the check boxes where they can choose more than one
Yeah.
answer, it doesn't give partial credit. It's either
Yeah.
all or nothing, but you can come back
Yeah.
in here and say, okay, they got one of them right out of 2, I'll give them a point.
Yeah, which if I show you the quiz from earlier, the what kind is bear's best question, if you notice, Black Bear actually didn't get points value, so I'd have to go in with that.
Just click it. Yeah.
Yeah, it's just acting slow today. There we go. So I can give it the points, which granted I forgot to put a point value on, but I could go in here and give the point values that need.
Because he capitalized
Over this.
black. Yeah.
Koala, no go, but I'll give the capital B. The blank, I'm not going to get credit to, but you can do this for questions like that if it's, say, if you punch in an answer and you typed it in lowercase, or if you put a capital first letter and they didn't, they got it wrong, you could go in and check that. And that's why I always say, set it that you don't release until after manual review.
Right.
And here's all you got to do with release. If you go to, if I can get the darn thing to work with me.
I think it's because you got it zoomed in, or do you have it zoomed in?
I don't even have it zoomed in. It messed up my aspect ratio, like royally. Because that's,
Yeah, it's zooming on you.
yeah, it's odd. But if we go to responses, which I could use this one as my example, and we go to summary, I can actually mass release my scores from here, and it will put it, who here was in the Google Classroom? assignment, or here was in Mr. Smith's Google Classroom thing this morning. You can release it from here and it goes to Google Classroom like you're turning it back into them. And then all you gotta do from there is upload to portals.
It uploads to Portal?
it's a brand new thing, they just started.
It uploads
I'm
to the
working-
grade book. The grade
To the
book.
grade book.
Yeah. Now, I'm still working on that feature. That's the one thing I haven't gotten the hang of yet. But all you gotta do is after you're done grading,
I can show you.
yeah, I could click release scores, which I haven't graded these three, so disregard their scores because they're all about to probably go up 4 points. But I would click release scores, they get that in Google Classroom, so their Google Classroom, they can look in like, you know, Brendan will be looking at, if he got 4 points, so 6 points on the essay, he'd have a 30 out of 30, because the essay is worth 6 points and that's where his points are missing. Brendan would see he had a 30 out of 30, and then I punch that in portals.
Does it matter if you've done all your kids in one class? Will gradebook still put them where they belong?
You need them in separate classrooms.
Now,
I
here's
will
what I
say-
do. Show the spreadsheet thing at
Yeah.
the top. I do the spreadsheet, and then I'll export as a Excel
Alphabetical.
file. And my first two questions on every quiz are, what is the last name and what period are you in? Then in my Excel spreadsheet, I do a sort by period. I do a secondary sort alpha, and then I can add bonus points, or I can scale them all with a
Awesome.
second column.
Awesome.
And then I put a total in, and then everything's alpha. I just put the two screens on, put them into my grade book that way.
And
I know it's a little bit tedious, but I do a lot of scaling of
On the
scores.
name of adding questions, another thing is this little boy right here that says import questions. For my final exam,
Yeah.
I'll
Pull
pull
from
from
others.
previous, Now it's only from Google Forms is
Sure.
my only way of doing it.
Sure.
So let's say you do a bunch of small quizzes and you decide to make a big assessment like a test at the end. You could pull from this. So I'm gonna pull from my true, like if I do a chapter test, if we're still out, I'm gonna pull true or falses from my previous quizzes. I'm gonna pull a couple questions, not all of them, but a couple, just so you know the fact, to kind of facilitate that prior knowledge kind of a deal. So you can do that, and that helps you as far as speed and all that. And you have all this organized. Make a folder in Google Drive that's dedicated to your science, math, Google Forms, and you just draw back on that. You can pull up on this next year. You get to this lesson next year, and you're like, oh my gosh, I have this paperless way to survive fourth quarter. Oh. So yeah, my only issue that I'm worried about, once again, I brought this up earlier, is the fact that there's no way of preventing students from opening a new tab, going on to Google or something like that. That's why I'm encouraging, especially my history people who've already bailed, to facilitate. We talked about this in our meeting this morning. More critical thinking essays and
Ask
stuff like that.
questions they can't look up.
What? Ask questions they can't look up, which is totally doable with this, and it's stupid easy. I mean, it's intuitive. If a doofus like me can do it, so can y'all, and that was totally my closing line.
Mr. Cook, stop me for a second. I've already
Not
given one
necessary.
assessment.
It was a bit rambly, but I got it